Hi everyone, this is Olga. Thank you for watching this video. Today we're talking about neuroplasticity, what it really means, how it makes all changes in our lives possible, how we use it in coaching. But first of all, if you're new to this channel, thank you for joining me, and I hope you will like and subscribe, and I will see you again next Wednesday with a new video on something else about coaching. I think we will start talking about dismissing our feelings, dismissing our needs and wants, and also downplaying ourselves. But that's for the next time. Today we're diving into what neuroplasticity is and what it means for us. So stay tuned and do comment as we go along. If you have any questions, something's not clear, you're not sure about how that applies to you, comment down below and I will be happy to jump into the conversation with you. So let's dig in. So starting from the very beginning, neuroplasticity literally means that our neurons can form new pathways between the neurons. They can change. The pathways can change, they're plastic, they're not static. So that's all that neuroplasticity means. Why is it so important for us? Because that means we can create new connections, we can create new pathways, and that means our thoughts can change, our behaviors can change, and in that way we can change our lives. There are two analogies that I really like here. So the first one is a map, and especially if you think of the roads next to work. So you can have highways, really big, very good tarmac, you can go really fast, easy to find the destinations, you have all the signs everywhere, super easy. And you can have a hiking trail or none at all, just fields and bushes and woods. And it's a lot harder to find your way to a different place, to a new destination, if there is no road and no signs and you have no idea where to go and you have no GPS. This is sort of how our neurons work. So those thoughts, those behaviors that we're used to thinking, they are our highways. Our neurons are traveling down there, super easy, super fast, send signals, like no time at all, done in a nanosecond. Those ones where we don't have a highway, the thoughts that we're not used to, the behaviors we're not used to, really hard. They may happen every now and again, but it's really hard to make them into a habit, to really stick with them. That's why habits take some time to form, because creating a new neural pathway takes some time. Now, the first thing we want to do is map out what roads we already have. So we want to map out what connections our neural pathways already have, where they're leading, what destinations there are on the map. So let's take an example. If I am used to thinking about what's wrong with me, then I have all the destinations there of what is actually wrong with me. I have big highways leading there and my neurons just travel there in a light speed. In no time, they give me a full list of what's wrong with me. If I'm not very used to thinking of what's right with me in all the ways that I'm okay, it's not just that there is no roads. Maybe I don't even know there's places there. There may be like hidden cities somewhere, you know, in the jungle that I have no idea they even exist, and nor do I know how to find them. There's no trails, no roads, nothing. That's sort of how our neurons work. So if I'm trying to think now in a new way and I want to start thinking about what's right with me rather than what's wrong with me, in the beginning it will be really difficult. It will be a struggle. I will really be putting an actual effort into thinking a new thought. The other problem is, until we start exploring that in coaching, or you start exploring it with yourself, you just start considering it, a lot of these roads, a lot of these destinations that are on our map, we don't think of them as just thoughts. We think of them, well, this is how the world is. We don't separate ourselves from them. So for us, this is our reality. We don't notice that it's not an actual objective reality. It's just the way our neurons have learned to represent that reality for us. If we're continuing with this analogy of maps and roads on the maps, then change would mean that we divert the traffic from the existing highways onto the new paths, onto the new ways. What we would need to do for that, we need to figure out what those new destinations are. First of all, we need to determine where we want to go. Then we need to create roads there. So we need to first plan them on the map, and then we need to actually make them. We need to create them. So we need to practice those new behaviors, those new thoughts. And this is why change is really complicated, because you're trying to get to a new destination, the one you don't have the road for. You're going through the jungle. You're trying to create those new neural pathways, but you can hear the highway in the distance. It's right there, and the neurons will try and get back onto the highway as much as they can, as often as they can, because it's easier. We all do what's easier, and the neurons are no exception. And afterwards, once we created the new roads, we created the new highway, we've diverted the traffic, we can then dismantle the old highway altogether and just not use it anymore. There is one more analogy that I really like to use here. Our brains, in a way, act like search engines. You put in the query, they give you all the results. So, and you know the predictive search in Google or any other search engine? You start putting something in and it suggests what you might be searching for. So you start putting in like things that are right with me, and Google is asking, were you looking for things that are wrong with me? And you're like, no, but that's what the neurons know about. That's the pathways we used to. So they continue to bring the results of everything that's wrong with me, even though I started asking them, well, what's right with me? But they haven't quite switched yet. But that's how they work. If you put in the query, the brain will deliver the results. It doesn't matter what query you put in, the brain will always find the ways to confirm those queries. If you're asking what's right with me, it will find what is right with you. If you're asking what's wrong with me, it will find examples of what's wrong with you. It will always find the results. So I guess you've gathered change is complicated. It does take time. It does take persistence. But what would it look like in practical terms if we're not building actual roads, but we're just changing how our brains are wired? So first of all, you need to get an idea of what you want to change. Things usually don't change on their own. Well, they do, but not necessarily in the way you want them. So first you get an idea of what kind of change you want. Could be in coaching. It could come just from a book you're reading or a movie you're watching. The inspiration can come out of nowhere. It could be something that happens in your life and you suddenly realize, actually, yeah, this is not quite how I want to live my life. I want it to be more like this. So you get an insight, you get the initial idea, and then that's where things start really happening. So step number 2, and the most important step, is practicing the new thoughts and practicing the new behaviors. And sorry, it's not the most exciting of solutions. It is a little bit boring, but yes, practicing. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, just like anything else. And exactly because of how neural pathways work and because of neuroplasticity, the more you do something, the easier it becomes, because the neural pathways become stronger, bigger, more solid. And that's why every new thing is a bit hard in the beginning, but the more you do it, any skill, any activity, anything, the easier it becomes. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. The key is persistence and not giving up, and doing it for long enough and often enough. If you're doing every now and again, doesn't really help. It kind of creates the pathway, but it doesn't make it solid and strong, and it probably wouldn't challenge the existing highway. But if you're doing long enough and often enough, it will challenge the existing highway. In a way, our neurons are really lazy. If I can use that word, we'll talk another time about why I don't think laziness is a very good word. Maybe we've already talked about it. Our neurons are lazy. They will always choose a road well traveled. Something they're already used to, something they already know, over something that's new. So that's why it's so important to stick with it in the beginning, especially until it becomes familiar enough for them to go easily down the road that you want them to go down there. And as I've already mentioned, the neural pathways that we have, that map of our brain, of our mind that we already have, is not the objective representation of reality. It's just a representation of reality, but it's not the reality itself. Just because we don't know anything different, because that's the thoughts we're used to thinking, it doesn't mean nothing else exists. If I'm only used to thinking of all the ways that something's wrong with me, it doesn't mean that there is nothing right with me. It's just I'm not used to thinking about it. And you often find it so easy to see when you're talking to a friend, you see all the ways that they're brilliant and beautiful and interesting and funny, but they somehow don't always see it in themselves. And they do the same with us. They see us as brilliant and funny and interesting and sweet, but we don't necessarily see it ourselves. Why? Because our neurons have different ideas about us and about other people. And sometimes we are a bit more prejudiced about ourselves. Now, one more thing I did want to mention, the very last step in our change, once we created those new destinations on our map of our brain, we created the destinations of everything that's right with me. We created the roads that lead there. We created very good highways. We put the best tarmac there. Everything is fine. The traffic's flowing easily. And we are really confident with ourselves. That's where microglia comes in. And if you don't know what microglia is, don't worry, I never knew either, but then I read one book. It is called Immunity, The Science of Staying Well by Jenna Machiocchi. I will put the full name in the description of the book so you can Google it and find it. It's really interesting. It's more about the immune system, but for me as a coach, I'm always interested in the brain, right? How the brain works, how the mind works. And there I found out about this microglia, and what those cells do, they clean up our brains. They clean up the unused, unnecessary old neurons and neural pathways, the ones we don't use anymore. So not only can we create a new highway, we can also remove the old one. We can plant trees there. We can plant a nice forest in there. We can maybe make fields. We can do anything there. It doesn't have to stay the way it is now. And this is where real change happens. So we can literally change the way our brains are wired. So how does it all look in coaching? So we start with mapping out your brain. What destinations do we have? Where do you go to? Where are your goals? What results are you getting? Do the roads that you have in your brain lead to the results that you want to get, or they really lead completely different places where you don't want to be anymore? That's where we start. We're trying to just see how things are. Next step, we are trying to think, well, what is on this map that you're happy with and what you're not so happy with? What are the things that are missing from the map, things that you want to add to your map, or what things you want to remove from the map? Because this is your life, this is your project, this is your brain. It can be any way you want. It's really up to you. And then the next step is, well, how do I get to those new destinations that I want to add to my map? Or how do I stop hanging out in the destinations I don't want to be in anymore? And remember, our neurons are lazy. How can I get there in the easiest way possible? That's also important. What can be in my way and how can I make it easy for myself? We're always looking for the path of the least resistance. If you know sales, you know that from sales, and that's true in anywhere else as well. But coaching is not all just about the inside. The inside is great. It's lovely. It's like as if someone lit up a light over your map and you can suddenly see everything, not just the little road that you're used to, but you see all the picture. And it's lovely. It's great, but it's only the start. The real work begins afterwards, and oftentimes coaching has delayed results. So you start coaching, you have your session, and then in between your sessions, you start creating those habits. You start practicing those new thoughts and those new behaviors, and that's when change really happens. And oftentimes, I will work with someone and then we finished working with them. I haven't talked to them in a while, and 6 months later, a year later, they tell me, oh, you know what? Right now, my life looks like this, this, and this, and it would not have happened if we did not have coaching back then, a year ago, 6 months ago, whenever it was. But the results keep coming. It's that gift that keeps bringing, and that's what I love about coaching so much. It's so exciting that you can change someone's life in a very short span of time in a way that lasts. So I hope you're with me on that, and I hope you're excited about it. Otherwise, you're probably not watching this video anyway up to this point. But thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me. If you are interested and inspired by this kind of content, do like and subscribe. It really helps promoting the channel and it helps other people finding it as well. And stay tuned, we will talk next week about all the ways we're dismissing ourselves, downplaying ourselves, what the risks of those kind of behaviors and thought patterns are, and the main part, what we can do about them. So thank you all, have a great week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. The plane, I don't know if you can hear it, so I'm just going to wait until it goes. And I will continue. That's the problem filming too close to Heathrow. I'm actually not that close to Heathrow, but I guess I'm close enough. Let's wait for another plane to pass. So many planes here, almost gone.